Hello and welcome to another episode of Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff. I'm Mike Evans.
And I'm David Price. Hello, Mike, behind the speaker.
David, on this week's episode, what are we going to be talking about?
It's the
I wonder.
Perlisten S4b, which by some strange coincidence happens to be this exact speaker you've got, which is crushing your knee at the moment.
Why have I got one and you haven't?
I'm not too sure about that.
Because it weighs a ton.
I think that could be one of the reasons.
It does actually. It's a serious piece of hi-fi.
It weighs 11 kilograms.
Yeah, it feels like it.
Yeah.
It feels like about 111 at the moment.
Just tell me if you can't feel your legs.
No, I can't feel my legs. It's got really nice banana plugs.
Yeah,
I know that much. I think they weigh a kilo each.
They do. Yeah.
Look at that. And these are quite something actually, aren't they?
We did get a pair, by the way.
We do have a pair.
I declined to have them on my knee.
No, absolutely. And I'm actually not going to keep these on here for too long. I think we'll pop them down somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do my best to anyway. How's that?
So,
is that okay?
I think that's going to fall off. I'll just move it out the way.
Yeah, no problem. There you are. I'm glad you did that. Pop it down there. Pop it down on there. Yeah, they're only cheap, nasty things. Just chuck them over there. What we should have done is we should have had that and your musical fidelity amplifier as well on your lap, and then we could have squashed the sofa into the ground. You could crush coal with that and make diamonds, couldn't you?
You could. Yeah,
excellent.
So
tell me a little bit about them. Actually, I don't really know very much about them. They're not a company who are particularly on my radar.
Yeah,
I must forgive me.
So they are they're an American company.
Okay,
and they're making waves over in the States, I think. They're basically a kind of medium priced to sort of lower high end.
Medium priced.
Yeah, I mean they do stuff from about roughly £3,000 upwards,
right?
But you can end up easily paying sort of 12,000 for a pair of stand mounters.
Sure.
Sorry, floor standers.
Floor standers. Yes.
And this is the S4b. With the S series is the sort of top range.
It sounds like a rocket booster, doesn't it? The Saturn V S4b or whatever it is. So yes, excellent.
But they're sort of, this particular speaker is close, I would say, to the B&W 805 D4, which is the
which you know quite well, actually.
I do.
Don't you?
Had that in my system for a while.
Yes.
And I know the D4 series pretty well, anyway, generally. And the D4 series, again, the 805 D4, 800 series D4 is their sort of B&W's kind of premium brand, as it were, premium range.
Yes.
And the S series for Perlisten is their is sort of equivalent. So this is an expensive speaker. It's about £9,000 for two, it's designed for all number of applications. So, being a US speaker, obviously a lot of American audiophiles. Actually, a lot of Americans watch Hi-Fi Riff, don't they? So, hello there. So,
yes, there we are.
Greetings from across the pond.
Yes, indeed.
Indeed. Come over here and enjoy some better food and better weather one day. So
there's all of our American subscribers now unsubscribed.
Yes.
In one quote. Yeah.
Yeah. Either that or they've got a sense of humour like us. So. So anyway, they Perlisten are. They make a wide range of stuff, some interesting stuff. A lot of it is kind of home cinema, home theatre oriented, a lot of THX certified stuff. The speakers we're looking at have got THX Dominus and THX Ultra certification. So if you're into big home theatre stuff,
sure.
These would work. Looking at the specs, the frequency response is
here
interesting.
We go. Yeah, yes.
So from 100 hertz, 20 kilohertz, it's claimed to be within 1.5 dB.
So they're really flat response.
Really flat response.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
it seems to me there's quite a lot of American manufacturers who are really into their measuring. Probably more in many ways than some of the European manufacturers. Yeah. I think we tend to have companies who listen to the speakers and sort of don't worry too much about the odd sort of oscilloscope blemish. But actually, the Americans love to have a good flat response on their speakers, don't they? Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, to an extent. I think there's more of a culture of kind of measure performance there. And I think in the UK, I mean, they used to be in the UK in the 70s, but then funnily enough, magazines like the Flat Response, Hello Chris, are sort of put more of an emphasis on subjective performance.
Absolutely.
And so I think probably people of our generation are kind of the first generation just to not really bother too much about measurements so much.
Sure.
But in this case, I mean, it really is impressively flat, and that counts for something, because it means you can have no nasty kind of honking mid-range or kind of booming bass. And actually, listening to these, you can hear that, can't you?
Yes, very much so.
They are the absolute embodiment of a loudspeaker with no obvious flaws.
Yes.
But at the same time, you could make the argument they have a slight lack of character. Yeah,
and it's really interesting because you talk about the B&Ws, and I find them of a similar ilk, really measure nicely, sound really good, etc. So sort of I can see the parallels there.
Yeah.
But actually, for me, the kind of like the opposite type of loudspeaker would be, say, something like the Kerr Acoustics K300 Mark IIIs, which are very, very similar size and form factor, stand mounts, big stand mounts. And they're really musical. I mean, I hate, we use that term a lot, and it's crass, and I get it, but they really are. They're real foot tappers, and you get really into the music. I found with these, I listen to the hi-fi. And yet with, say, something like the Kerr Acoustics, I listen to the music. And it's a really important distinction, I think.
It is, but I'll develop that a bit. So the Kerr Acoustics sound great at low volumes.
That's very true.
And these really don't.
No, they don't at all.
You really need to push.
No. In fact, nothing happens at low volumes, does it?
And then they sound sort of innocuous and inoffensive. But they really wake up.
That's a brilliant point, actually.
When you put power in. So it's... to use our motorbike analogy, I had a Honda CBR 400, which redlined at 21,000 RPM or something like that. I don't know, it wasn't that many, it was like 18, only 18. And it really started going from about 15,000, So when it's on power, it was going really well. But for most of the rev range, it was flat as a pancake, as we would say.
And also with this, to draw a sort of similar analogy here, you need to have a really big engine, don't you? Because these really need the power. Now, from a measurement point of view, it's interesting because they don't measure as hugely inefficient. But oh my god, we had your musical fidelity amp.
Yes.
Your M8.
I like the way you said mine.
Well, sorry. It seems to have been in your system.
Henley Audios.
I have a Henley Audio, if you're watching, I have a theory as to why David still has it. It's because you don't have big enough blokes at Henley Audio to come and... Jeff Capes doesn't work at Henley Audio to come and lift it out of David's premises.
Basically, they had a really big guy working there when they delivered it to me.
Must have done, In fact, 3 or 4 of them, maybe.
Maybe he's in hospital now, having a back operation.
Former hod carriers. Quite. Even that, we had to really wind it up, didn't we, to get these to sort of start to perform.
We did have to. We're on volume level 80 or 82 or something with a 500 watt plus RMS per channel amp.
Any other speakers would have been sort of deafening us. Our ears would be bleeding. And yet that was
blowing up one or the other,
or blowing up quite. That was a standard listening level, wasn't it? Before it sort of came out.
So they need. They need a lot of bothering from the amplifier, don't they?
They do.
They need a lot of sort of power. And they do sound. I think they sound really good when you're really going for it. Putting lots of volume into them, lots of power into them. But the Kerr Acoustics are almost the opposite. Well, I'm not saying they sound bad at high volume, but they sound very good at low volume.
They do.
So
also, the interesting thing about these. The S4bs is that they are very source dependent. So and let's take that one step further back. Recording dependent as well. So if your recording isn't great, then they really don't sound great in any way, shape, or form.
So that's a great point, Mike.
That was an interesting album. That was your 808 state.
Yeah.
In fact, you had 2 copies of this.
Yes.
American,
the American US pressing,
and the Japanese.
This is
one.
the Japanese.
Japanese one sounded better for me.
Yeah.
More detail, more info. But low volume's okay, but whacked it up. I really enjoyed it, actually.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I felt that the sound was almost kind of got a bit stuck in the speakers.
Yeah.
It didn't sort of come out and sort of punch you in the face.
Yeah.
But I really thought that was nice.
Yeah.
That was really, really nice.
Well, it was. I mean, we played Pacific State, which is on this one. It's Pacific 202, and it's a great sort of end of the 80s kind of rave track, isn't it?
Yes,
track.
Absolutely.
It's not a famously good recording, I'd say. It sounds pretty murky. I've used this as a test track for 30 years.
Sure.
It's really good. It's a great song if you like that kind of thing.
Yes.
But it's one of those things that just unpeels like an onion, as it were, with really good speakers and systems. You really get to hear an awful lot of what's going on.
Yes.
But it sounds pretty rubbish for most speakers and so on. But these speakers really got into it. They were quite forensic, and they threw out an awful lot of detail, I thought.
Yeah.
And I could hear a lot of stuff going on independently of all the other stuff going on. But at the same time, it was very satisfying to listen to, but it was a kind of sort of analytical process, as it were.
Yes. You didn't get up and dance.
No. Whereas if you had a big pair of JBLs, you probably would.
Yes.
But at the same time, they're probably less detailed, I think. So.
And then what else did we play? We played something which really didn't sound very good
we
at all.
then moved to this, which is...
Everything But the Girl.
Yeah, which is the first... their first single, I think, was Each and Every One.
Yes.
It
was.
And...
this is Eden, their first album.
Eden, it's a lovely album if you like that
it's
kind
glorious.
of indie jazzy sort of stuffy
Tracy Thorn's voice,
folky
finest.
even.
But it really didn't sound amazing, did it?
No,
unfortunately.
It's not a brilliantly recorded album. It's a bit
no.
It's a bit basic, but I've heard it sound better.
Yes,
and it was just saying that it's a little bit. The album itself is a little bit bright. Which is true. But it didn't really seem to sort of gel particularly.
No, it really didn't. No. Gosh, then you changed tack.
Yeah, then we went...
Guns N' Roses.
Guns N' Roses, mate.
Appetite for Destruction.
Absolutely. It's
I was a bit meh about that.
Yeah, I mean, again, we needed to put power into it to get it going.
Yeah.
But it seemed with this... to really start.
Yeah, that was Dire Straits, wasn't it? Yeah, so we played. I said to David, right, we've tried a few different albums. Let's play something which is sort of hi-fi show.
Yeah.
So we played Sultans of Swing because that's what you hear at hi-fi shows. And it kind of really began to come alive.
It really sounded good.
Yeah, it sounded way better, didn't it?
So there was a big contrast between the Guns N' Roses, for example, and this.
Yes.
So this just sounded sort of matter of fact and like meh. And this sounded, the depth on this was great. Though it sounded warmer, it had a kind of better overall feel. It sounded more vibrant and lively, didn't it?
It did.
And loads of detail.
Yeah. We're getting worryingly close to a top tip being buy loudspeakers which are coloured. If you want to sort of, if you want to, with coloration, if you want to hear, not very well recorded albums.
Yeah.
They need a really good source, don't they?
They do, absolutely.
Big amp.
Yeah. Exactly.
They're a tough ask. They're a big ask, aren't they?
Absolutely. They are a sort of very demanding of everything, really.
It made me laugh when you said they'd be really good rear speakers on a surround sound system. At a mere £9,000 a pair for your rear speakers.
I wasn't talking with a £300 Denon receiver, Mike. So I was thinking about some of those massive surround systems you have in US listening rooms. Where the listening room is basically the entire sort of floor area of my entire house. I could see those being rear channel, to go with the absolute massive sort of floor standards at the front.
Sure.
But you know, the point is that these, as you say, they ask a lot of questions. Firstly, of the source itself, and of, i.e., the DAC, and even before that, the recording itself.
Yes, 100%.
And then they ask a lot of questions of the amplifier, which has not only got to meet all the kind of physical characteristics, i.e., able to drive, you know, pretty inefficient 85 dB sensitivity speakers, and I think that might even be a little bit optimistic.
I think it's very optimistic.
That figure.
Yeah.
And you need to get a lot of power into them, and the nominal impedance is 4 ohms. It drops down to 3.2, they say. So again, it's got to have good load driving.
Yes.
So it's not only have to be physically very good in the sense it can drive loud in a distortion-free way at low impedances. It's also got to sound really good as well.
Yes.
So you know, so maybe if you've got a kind of constellation, you know, stereo power amplifier costing more than most people's cars,
or a Name-Nate 1.
No, not a Name-Nate 1, Mike, I'm afraid. So yeah, if you want to blow up Mike's Name-Nate 1, we'll be connecting it to these speakers.
Could you imagine? And I was saying to you earlier, they really remind me of a pair of speakers from the late 80s, which were the Celestion SL600, which were made of some kind of space-age material, Aeroflon or something. I can't remember what they were called. It was like they were like made of metal.
Aerolam, wasn't it?
Aerolam, that was it. Yeah, and they had these like really sort of high-end treble units, which were sort of metal. You know, I can't remember what titanium
some sort
or
of
something
metal dome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they were impossible to drive, and they just you couldn't buy amplifiers big enough for them, even though they were tiny little bookshelf speakers.
Yeah.
They were phenomenally expensive.
Yeah.
They came with subwoofers as well. You had to buy. Then they were called the 6000, I think, with the subwoofers, because they just didn't really have any bass. And they kind of reminded me a little bit of those, you know, tough to drive and you know, really hard to get the most out of.
Absolutely, and those were very good on classical, and you needed massive power and good recordings.
Yes,
otherwise they sounded quite underwhelming.
They did,
and you needed to drive them loud.
Yeah,
and so all of that applies to these. Obviously, these are not the same as SL600s. They're bigger and more powerful, and they've got better bass and so on. And, and they're a long way. I think they're much better. They've got better treble. They've got nice treble. I think these very delicate and etched and incisive.
It's very unusual, the drive unit layout, isn't it, here? Because you've got like the treble unit, but it's also got almost like two other treble units as well, which seem to sort of make that's sort of where the mid-range comes from, I guess.
Yes, it's got what's called a DCP array, which is so
is that named after you?
It almost could be, couldn't it? So there we go. Beryllium dome tweeter.
What would the C stand for if it was your name?
I don't know.
I'm sure I could think of a few C's.
I'd rather you didn't.
Okay, we'll move on.
So, yes, I think that's one, diversion too many there, Mike.
Sorry. So I am genuinely interested. So what does this structure mean? What does
I don't know.
Okay. But effectively it like makes the mid-range, doesn't it?
Yes, it's a kind of it's a sort of mid-range treble array.
Right.
And,
okay.
If you really want to know what it means, Google is your friend.
There you are. And really interesting bass units as well too.
Yeah. So a TPCD bass unit. Don't ask me what that means.
Okay.
180 millimeter, so not very big. But then again, the speaker is relatively narrow.
It is.
And
beautifully finished. I mean, they look amazing. They weigh a ton.
So they weigh 11 kilograms each. I mean, they're kind of mid to small size stand mounts, but they're certainly bigger than the Falcon Acoustics limited edition LS35As.
I love those.
Yeah.
You talk about different ways to skin a cat.
Yeah.
I mean, these are totally different to those. Totally different.
Well, absolutely. So that's the interesting thing. At this price, you start to, instead of every speaker being a kind of generic two-way, with a kind of 200 mil or 160 mil bass unit or mid bass and a sort of 25 mil treble unit, which all kind of came out the same factory kind of thing, which you have at the budget end. So you start to get, at this price, you start to get all kinds of interesting and weird and wonderful things happening.
Yes.
And, there's much more diversity, as it were, at this price, and so you can buy the incredibly expensive and glamorous and lovely limited edition Falcon LS35As if you can find a pair, or you could get the B&W 805 D4s,
or the
Kerr Acoustics, which are a bit cheaper, but still in that kind of ballpark slightly.
Yeah.
So that's the fun actually about it. And everyone's got their. It's like bikes. Everyone's got their favourite. I mean,
that's so true.
You've got what
got a KTM.
You've got a KTM.
Yeah.
Is it 8 or
Duke? 9? Yeah, 890 Duke. Yeah.
890 Duke.
Yeah.
So I don't have I've got a Honda MTX 200 at the moment, but I could go and get a sort of CB 900 or something, or a CB 600 or whatever, CBR 600.
Yeah.
And that would have a very different
totally different.
You'd have to rev the hell out of it, and and it would be harder to drive or ride. Maybe in the places where the Duke is brilliant, I guess.
Yeah, and it's a bit like sort of, I'm not a massive Harley fan, but I totally get why people buy Harleys.
Yeah.
And for me, these speakers probably wouldn't be the choice I would make.
Yeah.
But I totally understand why people would like them.
Yeah.
But they're just not quite my thing. Is that am I allowed to say that? They just don't really do it for me. So and which is a shame, because I was really looking forward to listening to them, but it just wasn't quite there for me. They're too. They're not coloured enough. I need a bit more excitement. I need a bit more, a bit more boom and tiz.
They're a kind of, that they've been designed very carefully to be super neutral and super flat, and they do that very well, and also very detailed. Yeah. And they're extremely good, I think, probably with classical music, where you're really listening at the kind of timbre of the instruments. Also, they have very good depth perspective as well, I thought, especially with the Dire Straits. We began to hear that really coming out when you've got a real stereo image, as it were.
Yes.
But again, they just putting Guns N' Roses through them just didn't work.
No, it didn't. No, so no, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. So they're it's horses for courses, and I think you and I would not naturally go for that sort of sound.
No, Guns N' Roses was a bit like taking a Lexus to a racetrack, wasn't it? Just not designed for it at all.
It just, it's just like it doesn't really didn't seem right.
No,
but I think the real rival for these is the B&W 805 D4s, and the 805 D4s are a little bit more kind of musically articulate, and they sound better at lower volumes than these do. These really they need power and need a big room, I think.
Yes. So, have you made yourself a cup of tea? Did you make me a cup of tea?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks.
So after what you said about my Volvo, Mike,
we haven't mentioned the Volvo this riff. We haven't mentioned the Volvo. We can do.
Yeah. No, that's not.
How's your Volvo?
No, let's not talk about my Volvo, please.
Okay.
So thank you for laughing.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Just one thing I do want to mention, because I was in your toilet earlier.
Right.
And I found something in your toilet.
Okay.
And it was this. It was very interesting.
All right.
I found this. Look, it's a Comet. It's a Comet price list from 1973. This is the sort of thing which David normally has in his toilet. So this really didn't come as any surprise. It's got a list of every single Comet. Opens up very nicely. Look into everything that Comet sell. Including some interesting hi-fi.
You've got to decide which one you'd buy, though, haven't you? It's 1973. You're off to Comet.
This is not the reason why I'm mentioning this. The reason I mention this is because on the front here, it says massage, and then it's got a phone number on it, Medway 49171.
Good grief! Let's have a look at that.
Ooh, no, it's mine now.
All right.
It has. It's got a massage.
Does it say what type of massage is involved?
Strangely enough, it doesn't.
It says M Sage.
Yeah, but it's got an apostrophe in it. Where they missed out there. So I found that.
Well,
I found a massage parlour number in your toilet again.
So, that's Medway 49171.
Don't all phone that up now. There we go. So, excellent. I just thought I'd point that out. But yeah, interesting.
Thank you for that, Mike.
Okay. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So I didn't do Volvo, but I got your anyway.
Yes.
Some toilet humour.
Absolutely.
Let's do a Riffometer on the Saturn V rocket boosters.
Yeah. So they're not really aimed at me. So I wouldn't say I'm sort of passionately love them personally. but I think they're extremely well designed, well engineered, well made speakers, which are designed very specifically for a certain type of listener, music fan, with a certain type of room. So they're kind of quite specialist stuff.
They are, yes. Yeah.
So for me, I'm going to give them 8. I think I can see the quality in them, but I just think they there's a lot of competition around at the price, and there are sort of more well-rounded products around that do better across a broader spectrum. Or you know, and certainly in the UK as well, we tend to listen a lot at low to medium levels.
We do.
And
Yes.
you really these do sound great, but you need to really get them revved up, don't you?
Subjectivity of hi-fi, isn't it? Right here in a nutshell. Because if they're your thing, then they're a 10 for you.
Yeah.
But do you know what? They're not mine.
No.
And I'm only going to go as far as a 7.
Yes.
They didn't excite me enough, I'm afraid. So,
yes. Well, but you've got quads there, Mike. So.
Well, what can I say? What can I say? If I had a choice of all of the speakers, I'd have the Kerr Acoustics, because I think for me they float my boat.
Yeah.
They would be my 10. But then if somebody liked these, then they probably wouldn't like the Kerr Acoustics.
Absolutely.
So there we are.
Exactly. That.
But look, very interesting. Been amazing to listen to. I totally appreciate all of their good points.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for watching this episode of Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff. And we'll see you at the next one. Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.